just have to put straight lines, and one straight line, it must be supervised by the human.
Prevent the misuse and to prevent the harms.
So part of deterrence is that signaling.
We can start. Well, welcome to everyone who made it after coffee break to this room. I hope people will be pouring in as we talk. So we may just as well start the panel, and welcome to our discussion today. I'm extremely happy to be discussing Agentic AI threat challenge from automation to autonomy. We'll touch upon three main themes, and we'll see on the time. I also will ask questions from the we'll ask 4 questions from the audience. So please prepare some. We really want to open up to Q&A, and we'll discuss 3 main topics, and then, if we get the time, some EU and US dichotomy. The first one for the circles will be how to understand autonomy in AI models, because we see a lot of confusion between automation and full autonomy, the practical implications of frontier AI models, and the solutions to govern them. I'm incredibly happy to welcome our speakers today. Philippe Latombe, member of the French Parliament and president of the NIS2 Implementation Commission. Welcome, Philippe. Raimond Kaljulant, member of the Estonian Parliament and chair of Estonian delegation to NATO Parliamentary Assembly. Welcome, Raimond. We had last-minute change in the program, so we have Arno Garrick from Breach Hunt, so French private sector, instead of security policy. And we also had one last-minute change, and it's Martin Signou, AI policy lead on Europe, the Middle East, and Africa at OpenAI. Welcome with us. My name is Pavlina Pavlova. I'm the founder of Critical Cyber, which is a non-profit organization working to make the human impact of cyber attacks impossible to ignore. Let's start the rounds, and then we will open up to the audience. We will be starting around the understanding of autonomy, so setting the discussion from more technical concept and understanding what we are really building the policy and governing structures for. And let me start with you, Martin. Policymakers often conflate automating and agentic systems. So in very simple terms, can you explain what's the distinction that actually matters in practice? And speaking of the complexity of these models, can you give a very concrete example of an agentic system experiencing a logic conflict or execution loop that led to an unintended outcome?
Thanks a lot. Indeed, this is a very important topic to distinguish between automation and agentic systems, because the autonomy of models is something completely different to what we've experienced over the past couple of years as model capabilities increased. I will try to get concrete on some specific examples to illustrate what this difference means in practice. But I want to start by saying up front, the full autonomy that some people think about with a very science fiction a vision of what AI agents can do or what robots can do not exist as of today. We may reach that point in the future at some point, but and we are clearly seeing the capabilities of model going increasing really fast and trending towards more and more autonomy, and we are actually thoroughly evaluating this level of autonomy. I can say more about that in a minute. But what we've seen over the past couple of years with the advance of reasoning models and coding agent is basically agentic capabilities. And I will give a very concrete example of what that means. When ChatGPT and other generative AI systems were released 2022, 2023, you could do certain things with these tools, but there was a lot of frictions. There were a lot of barriers. You could have a prompt and you get an output. You could exploit this output in terms of the code that was generated. You could give your own code as an input to identify vulnerabilities. But it was there was a lot of barriers, a lot of frictions. What the agentic domains and the great progress we've made over the past couple of years in reasoning models and the tools that these models can use has really streamlined what you can do and has sped up the process of cybersecurity execution and task. Let me give you a concrete example. If you are giving an agent access to your code base, you can basically prompt your agent and say, browse and scan this code base, identify vulnerabilities, triage these vulnerabilities by order of importance, propose me patches for these different vulnerabilities, and I want you to do all of that in a way that I can execute these patches very promptly after I reviewed that. And then your agent will go work for like a few dozen minutes, a few hours to execute these tasks, but it follows your instructions. It's not autonomous. You cannot just like tell to your agent like, ensure the cybersecurity of my website, of my infrastructure, and that's it. So I think this is really where like the key difference is. Agentic systems can take actions that are extremely useful. And actually, if you look at like the time, if you look at like the recent graph of like time to exploit, for example, we are seeing a massive decrease. Like a couple of years, we were still at like a few months between like the identification of vulnerabilities versus exploitation. Today, like this time has been compressed to a couple of hours. And of course, agentic AI and AI plays a role into that, but that also means that it can empower the defenders. And this is exactly like the philosophy we're trying to advance at OpenAI, democratizing access to these advanced cyber capabilities for the trusted players and cyber defenders, while mitigating the risks in the general available model that we give to the general public. And we can maybe like discuss that gradual approach later in the roundtable, because that's something that is really, really important as we speak today.
Thank you very much for setting us for this whole journey later with governance. And Arno, I have a question for you, but also because you came in last moment on our panel and you do represent Breach Hunt, which may not be completely self-explanatory which angle you will be taking. Can you explain what exactly your company does on like at the intersection of agentic models and military and security? And also then taking it from a security perspective, is agentic AI a new threat category, or we have the same attack surface just moving faster?
Thank you. I'll try to be brief as well. But so Breach Hunt is a cyber intelligence company. Basically, what we do is transforming capabilities of intelligence in the cyberspace, specifically in the dark web, into products and services. So it gives us a very good view of what's happening in the deepest regions of the dark webs and how the most efficient offensive minds are working. Yes, of course, in the criminal industry, but that's very interesting. And so my point of view is the one of someone who is all the time, yes, with my team, of course, but all the time into with the cyber criminals and the people actually doing what we call the cyber war and anything one, but the boundaries between cyber criminality and any other kind of cyber offensive activity is getting blurry. So I think it gives us a very interesting overview of what's happening. So I'm going to answer your question now. Yes and no. Oh yeah, sorry, but yes, why? Because by itself, it's a new category of products. It's a new category of software. It's quite new. It's evolving so fast that in a few years, a few months, you have already something new. The last news was Mythos, of course, but what it's going to be tomorrow, we don't know. So it's evolving very, very fast. There is already a whole new approach to pen testing, red teaming, challenging models, agents, and stuff like that. And since the tools are getting more and more integrated into the private and the public sector, it is absolutely a new attack surface by itself, because it's a new technology. So new technology means new attack surface. Like to give you another example, if we are talking about cryptocurrencies, Web3, with the smart contracts, we have a whole new attack surface for this financial product. So yes, but also no, because anything that those models are allowing is to, in my opinion, of course, it's to shrink time. So everyone knows the phrase, time is of the essence. It's never been so true. So right now what we're facing is a challenge because, once again, I'm going to quote a very good friend, attackers think at machine speed, but we defenders, we think at human speed. And, if we stay that way, we're going to lose at some point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for explaining what Britain does. It's yeah, it's very exciting to also have, and I see that you also sit together. Like we have the private sector, and then we have the public sector. So this may create very interesting dynamic. But let's come to Philip. Now when we are coming to the rules, it does changes, and as the speakers outline, like we are maybe, we are getting there, we may not be fully there with a complete autonomy, but the existing rules that we have, and the legal and policy frameworks, the governance around it assumes that somewhere there is human in that loop, somewhere there is a human responsible for systems, decisions, and I know you just said it so beautifully, like humans are thinking at a like human speed, and we have systems that just like operate at a very different speed, and how can that come together? And even operationally coming together, it's so difficult. But then we have those frameworks around that are supposed to regulate in a way that makes it more effective and more secure. So at what point does that assumption break down, and are policymakers confronting this new reality? Like, do we always need that human in the loop to have accountability that are created by the rules, or will this also change with the completely autonomic systems?
Maybe to quote the president speaker, when he said defenders are working at human speed, politicians, policymakers are working at the turtle speed. And that's not quite a joke, and it must be like that, because we are in front of a new technology, and you said it at first. The speed of this technology is increasing every day, every month, every week, and in 2023 we didn't have the Agentic AI. We have it now, and we don't know what will be in months. And we, as policymakers, we just have to put straight lines, and one straight line is today, and maybe will be in the future, that it must be supervised by the human. The decision must be a human decision and not an automatic decision. And that was the goal in the French Parliament. It's also the goal for the AI Act in Europe, to say that humans must decide, and AI is just a tool to help humans to decide. Maybe it will change because of the technology, and we have to speak about that and to discuss about ethical in that way. But at that time, humans are in decision. There's maybe in some kinds of areas in the world decisions that are made by AI only, and it's in defense or in that kind of areas. But we, as a policymaker, we just said in France, in Europe, that the humans are the decision makers, and I don't think there's another way at that time in the parliament in France to say it another way. All my colleagues are very afraid about AI. They're afraid about AI and culture. They're afraid about AI and defense. They're afraid about AI and the technology, that the question that it brings for employment, and they want to have humans in front of AI. And that's the way I feel it in France, but also in all Europe. But we do not, as policymakers, we just have to take time to make the policy, and it will be another question we could talk about. But we do not have to rush, because the technology is so urging, so speed. There's so much speed about technology that if policymakers are using that kind of speed, we'll make mistakes. So we need to put all the things down, to think not only on the national feeling, but in a European feeling and in a worldwide feeling. There's a question about mythos, and maybe we can talk about it. There's asymmetrical things about mythos. We do need to put all the things down and to think. And that's one of the question. And we must put human in front of AI and say that humans are the only thing we should protect at that time.
Thank you. And yes, indeed, there is so much better reputation for politicians and like how fast their decisions are being made. But at the same time, if you want to have like working from the multi-stakeholder perspective, when we want to have robust and accountable decisions, you also need to. These are consultative processes. These are not orders of a single person. This has to be done as a consultation, as a group thing, and that takes a lot of time. So something that like the rules that I focus on try to achieve was like to make them as technology agnostic as you can, right? But what we are discussing today is that with autonomous models, you are basically addressing something that even those threats may escape. Because there is no human eventually. But Raimond, coming to you, you come from Estonia. Estonia is a country that has dealt with state-level cyber operations for nearly 2 decades. So what are the changes operationally when the adversaries tools start making their own decisions in the middle of the operation and they are doing it at speed?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So just to maybe give you a little bit of context, I represent the Estonian Parliament's Defense Committee. So I think we have a little bit of a different way that we're looking at these kinds of systems, and it comes very much from our historical experience. So as we all know, France was also occupied for 5 years, almost 5 years, during the Second World War. And as it happens, actually, we were occupied in the same month. So it was I think in June 1940. But France was liberated less than 5 years after that happened by the Allies, whereas Estonia was liberated itself, basically extracted itself from the Soviet Union in 1991, and we got rid of the Soviet troops on our soil in 1994. So it took us 10 times longer, over 50 years. So when we look at our national defense and any question that comes up, be it very stupid landmines to high-end systems using autonomy or automation, we look at it from the perspective of never having that happen again. So I think that gives you a little bit of a different idea. You mentioned the human in the loop part. So I hear this in all these conferences, and I think politicians have learned that you have to say that there needs to be a human in the loop because that's very ethical. So I think most people would, I just want to address that, I think it's important. So most people would say that, for instance, if you were to have a drone system which uses AI to automatically identify targets and then destroy those targets, with the humans inside, that would be highly unethical. Would everybody agree? It's highly unethical. In that case, we have to ban all NATO smart naval mines, because a naval mine is programmed to identify a certain type of ship. It's put in the water, it's underwater, and when ships pass by, and they're not the ships that it is meant to blow up, it just sits there and waits. And then once the right ship comes along, that mine does not call the naval headquarters of the French Navy or the Estonian Navy. It just blows that ship up. And it blows it out of the water, shakes it massively, breaks it into pieces, sailors die. So that's a fully automated, no human in the loop system that we're using today. So that's the thing I want to say. But coming to your question, how do we deal with these things? So just a few things. First of all, we're just adopting a new law on national defense that for the first time, and I think maybe there are some other countries in NATO that do that, but it defines national security not only through borders and territory and constitutional order, which are the traditional ways you define national security, but also through informational and cyberspace. So that's very important. It's going to give that strategic direction to what we're doing. We have created a transformation command with our defense forces. It was created last year by the Chief of Defense. It's directly under him. And the Transformation Command is tasked with looking at those new technologies and figuring out how do we integrate those technologies into our defense. And then maybe the third thing I would highlight is we understand that these new threats, the speed and everything, we might not be able to physically defend ourselves against those types of attacks. So there needs to be resilience built in where civil society can exist, for instance, without any electricity or any basic services for a while. And we're working on that. We're spending a lot of money to do that. And then secondly, that the military needs to be able to continue resistance to the Russian Federation, even if, for instance, the command and control systems do break down. So we need to train all of our officers to be able to then autonomously function on the battlefield and continue their mission and understanding what the mission is, even if they cannot, for a time, be able to communicate or get any orders from above. So that's also something that we're doing in a very systemic way. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Actually, would like to continue with you with a follow-up question, moving to the second round of our questions, is that you spoke about adversary using this technology, you spoke about like a third country using those technologies, so national military. How is it different when you have your allies using it and those decisions may lack accountability because you said like there's no human anymore. Like we like to use that phrase because it became a handy word for us, but it's just not true anymore a lot in military technology. So what does it mean for cooperation in that, and who holds whom accountable in such settings?
So for us, that's actually not a very difficult question because Finnish President Alexander Stubb has this joke that he likes to make in conferences where he's asked, well, why does he have a military of 1 million people? Well, not because of Sweden. So when it comes to like attribution and who's attacking us, we have, there's no mistaking. It's only one country in the region that would be willing to and able to attack its neighboring countries, and that's Russia. So whatever happens, the attribution part is actually quite easy for us. I think also we have to understand that, I do understand the point of the question is that you can use a lot of these technologies that are being developed to kind of confuse and create this, what we would call fog of war when we don't really understand what is going on. And that is actually also not new. I mean, if you think back of the Normandy landings, the Allies took great efforts in informationally and then spreading misinformation through spying networks and double agents to convince the Germans that the invasion was coming from a totally different place, that they would build, these decoy tanks and ships and stuff that the Germans would see when they were flying over, and they would think that it's coming from a different direction. And that was successful, that Hitler withheld forces from to counter the invasion and stalled, and that gave the Allies time, and so the invasion was successful. In the same way, I think it's really crucial that apart from like having capabilities to counter these cyber attacks and understand what's going on, we need really like a 360 degrees intelligence picture. So we need signals intelligence, but then we also need satellite pictures and human intelligence. At the end of the day, the whole system depends on us knowing when the Russians have decided, the political decision has been made and the command has been given to start a military operation against NATO, and then we have time to counter it. So that's the idea is basically we have to know when the Russians know. And I think the Ukraine war proved it that we are capable of doing that because we, the United States especially, but NATO made it public that we know that Russia's going to attack. We know in which way it's going to attack. So I think that's really crucial. And then Russia also has to, they have to have uncertainty about what we know and how we know it. And that is something that will also, mess with them a little bit as well. But the point is, having really good intelligence so that when we are in this fog of war, and it is difficult to understand, that we will actually have the picture and know what's going on.
Thank you, Raymond. And I do feel like when we are discussing military technology, it's very natural to also like kind of sanitize the discussion, not really speaking about the harm that it causes. It's all about like operational efficiency and hitting the target and doing it at speed and doing it at, probably targeted, not at scale. But when I want to stay with you, Philip, like when autonomous systems cause harm, and we already see it a lot with cyber attacks. We will at the previous panel, Heli mentioned, we'll see a lot of it with AI in cyber operations, especially against like SMEs in Europe, small businesses, but also civilians, critical infrastructure. Like these attacks are on the rise already, with with systems being autonomous and with bad actors using them, we will see more harm to the populations, to critical infrastructure, to civilians. So where does the victim turn to? Like,
Yeah, that's a fact that with AI agentic, there's a new threat for the society, threat for the civilians, threat for the SMEs, threat for the organizations, and we need to have those tools to defend ourselves. And that's what you said at the first part of this roundtable. You said that you wanted to have the defenders having the same tools, and your neighbor said there's a difference between speed for the two, and we have a problem with the asymmetrical things with mythos, for example. The US are allies, and they have mythos, and they don't want to share mythos with us, and it may be a huge threat for the organizations in France or in Europe, for banking, for the civilians in the water supply organizations, and so on. And we need to have the same. If we are allies, we need to have the same tools. And that's one of the problem of what is going on with mythos, is that the US are keeping the tools for them and not sharing them. And that's one of the problem. We need, as defenders, to have those tools to defend from the attackers that are so rapid. So there's not, their speed is light speed, and we are told. You said we are walking. We are defending as human walking. Yeah, with mythos, it's worse. We do not defend when the attackers are already in our systems and putting harm on the organization. So we need the tools, and we need those tools with mythos. And if we do not have those tools, because the US doesn't want to share, we need to build them in Europe. So that's why Mistral is so important. We need autonomous agentic AI tools to protect ourselves. And we need to share the tools with all our allies in Europe, in NATO maybe, depends on the US position, but we need to share intelligence and to share tools. If we do not, we are in a great danger. And that's what the conflict in Ukraine told us, is we need to share intelligence, we need to share our tools, and when we share intelligence and tools, we can protect ourselves. So that's very important as we talk, that we are trying to convince the US to share the tools. And they say no at this point, and I think they will say no, just as we have the ability to build the same tools with Mistral or OpenAI, if you want to share with us your tools. Yeah.
I will share more.
So that's the point. So share. But I believe also mythos has been shared recently with NISA, or is going to be. So there was also movement in that side. But Philip, you hinted to a very important question, like when you are sharing or not sharing technology, are you also sharing or not sharing the responsibility? And there is this tension, and we are definitely not the first panel hinting on it, that everything, like the architecture is private companies' architecture, and it's being used in attacks, and it's being also very politicized, who has access to it and who is excluded. So these decisions are naturally very controversial. So let me turn to you, Martin. Though you will be biased, where does the company's responsibility start and end?
Yeah, no, that's a very important topic, and I agree with you, Philippe. We need to share, and I think as of OpenAI, we have shared. We have developed like a cyber model, GPT-5.5 Cyber. We've built like trusted access for cyber program. I will give you more details about this. And we've granted access in the EU to dozens of organizations a month ago already. And this is like very important because we want to empower the cyber community, and I will tell you why. Two reasons for that, because we feel that our responsibility is twofold. The first one is to prevent the misuse and to prevent the harms that can be done with these tools, with these models. And the second responsibility we have is to empower the cyber defense community. This is really what we strongly believe in. And we did not wait for the public debate to move to cyber and AI to start to act. On the cyber preparedness front, we've been preparing for these level of capabilities for years. In 2023, we established a safety and security protocol that is public, the preparedness framework, that lists certain risks that we are tracking: cybersecurity risks, CBRN, chemical, bio, radionuclear, loss of control and autonomy of models. And what that means in practice is that anytime we develop and deploy a frontier model, we have 4 of testing and safety testing and security testing done internally and externally, because we don't want to be grading our own homework. So we are working with government agencies, the UK Security Institute, the UK KZ. We are working with like non-profit and independent experts, Meter, Secure Bio, Apollo Research, and we are basically making sure that the models we are putting on the market are safe and are not creating unprecedented risk. And the thing is, like, as the capability advanced, the mitigation and the safeguards that we put in place advanced as well. And 2 things happened at the end, like second half of 2025. First, with the advance of like reasoning models and the progress in coding and capabilities, we saw that the cybersecurity risks would be on the rise as well. And we decided to do 2 things. The first thing we decided to do was to tell the world about that. We published blog posts in November and December of 2025 saying to the world, these capabilities are coming, cyber capabilities of these models are on the rise, you need to get prepared. That's the first thing. We communicated that. And the second thing, back to my second responsibility that we feel we have to empower the cyber community, we felt that because these capabilities would be available and because progress in AI cannot be controlled by a handful of players, we have a wide ecosystem that is very dynamic globally in China, in Europe, in the US, elsewhere. We felt that our responsibility was to develop tools that we could put in the hand of cyber defenders. We started to work on like cybersecurity agent at work that we released in October. We then expanded that and now it's named Codex Security. But most importantly, we built what we call Trusted Access for Cyber, which is a program where trusted cyber defenders, cyber agencies, operator of critical infrastructures, including banks, can apply, and they have applied, and they get access to these cyber models. Because what that means in practice is that we ship to the general public models with strong guardrails and mitigation, but of course the cyber defenders are not really happy with that because we want to equip the good guys with like better tools. But if you have a model that has strong mitigation measures, you won't be able to use it in the cyber context. If you use the GPT-5.5 model or whatever model is out there from the general public, and you ask it to like scan a code base to identify vulnerabilities, you will get a refusal. And if you are a cyber defender, that's a problem. So basically, through the Trusted Access for Cyber program, you need to be vetted, of course, because we do not want to give these capabilities to everyone, but to those trusted players, and I repeat myself, cybersecurity agencies, operator of like critical infrastructure, we are giving access to these models with frontier capability so they can face the misuse of these advanced AI agentic tools. And I think this is really, really important. And again, we did not wait for Mythos or the public debate to happen to start working on that. And we've been rolling out this program in Europe. You have dozens of actors in the private and in the public sectors that have access. And if you are cyber defenders, if you are interested in getting access to these models, there is a public form. You type Trusted Access for Cyber intake form OpenAI. You will get to the page. You need to fill a form. Our team will review. And if you are a trusted cyber defender, if you have a legitimate use case in the cyber defense system, you will be granted access. So that's really, really important that we collectively raise the bar of cyber resilience. And this is what we are trying to do at OpenAI.
If I may, I believe what you said, but imagine a world where the president of the USA says to you, you cannot give your models to the Europeans. What would you do? That's why we need to build our own system. We need to have competitors for you in Europe and maybe you can share technology with them, but we need to build our own technology on that point, because of what happened with President Trump. And it's not only President Trump, it's all the administration of the US for years. They want to have the Europeans not at the state of art on AI, and we need to build our own models. And it's not, I'm not saying that you're lying, I believe you, but we need to have those tools and we need to build them. That's why we are so keen on supporting Mistral and every other model, every other company in Europe that can be a cyber defender, AI agentic boss. I don't know how to say that.
But just, I think on this requires nuance. I'm not going to comment on like competitors or the position of the US government, but this needs nuance, and American companies are not necessarily like just the representative of the US government and so on. And I think this is why you have different timelines happening on this access to frontier cyber capabilities in Europe.
Can I add like a little light note to this discussion between our dear friends in France and I assume American French? So I just wanted to say a light note. Imagine all of you that President Trump had told Facebook and Instagram that they cannot share these applications with us. You would all be paying attention to this panel. You would have less addiction of your smartphone. You would have less mental health issues, less problems with your kids, talking to them about screen times and limitations and all these problems. So perhaps it is a good thing that President Trump, in his infinite wisdom, is not sharing with us all of these technologies. If I may, maybe it's a good thing. And maybe it is a bad thing what he's saying that they're going to give it to us, because it will only ruin our societies even more. Thank you.
Thank you. It was very good. I was trying to do the same, but I heard something very interesting when you talked, Philippe. It was, you mentioned fear. Just after that, you mentioned how you could defend yourself, and you have an offensive mindset. You are thinking on how you can take advantage on the main adversary you have, namely Russia. And then you talk about private sector and the strategic place you have. And I think this has a key ingredient. What I see here is we think from fear in France specifically. And you told us numerous times in your talks, you mentioned fear 2 or 3 times, and that's very important. But also you mentioned that mindset is evolving, even in the political bodies, even if they need time. And time is good. It's not a problem of time for thinking how we shape a market, how we shape a political body, how we shape a political process. It's okay, we need time. But execution does not need so much time. And then you have the offensive mindset, which maybe we may be lacking a little bit in France and Europe. And we have to change about that. And for that, you can count on the private sector, in France, of course. We can have allies, we can have partners. Of course, we need to build our sovereignty and autonomy. We need to be autonomous. It's of course we need that. But also what I think we need to do is, I'm going to quote a recent debate in France about OSINT, for that you know very well of. I think it's a very good example of how we take a debate and we sometimes forget that we are not operating on our own. There is a context, there is a international context, and we often start from a place of fear, to be sure, instead of starting from a place of how can we protect ourselves, how can we we don't want to fight here, we want to fight there, we want to fight in Russia, in the cyber Russia, but we don't want them to be here, we want to be there, I think it's a big change that's very refreshing to have another point of view on that, and to give us the opportunity to maybe to have a different agenda, a different perspective on how we can build something for us, even if it's active, offensive, and those were bad words in France until recently. Thank you.
If I may comment on it, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. So if you look for instance, when the 7th of October attacks by Hamas against Israel. So there was a a cyber element to it in a way that one of the things that they did is they targeted cell towers. They targeted data links. They targeted sensor systems and sensors. And they were effective. I was just at a conference where I had a guy that was from the Israeli Special Forces, and he said that on that day, his unit did not have any communications. So they could have saved many more lives, but they had no idea where the enemy was, and so they were like kind of just going around. When we look at in the same way, like if you think of Russia's offensive capabilities and weapon systems, for instance, drones and drone swarms that use autonomy and automation, you know, Estonia's energy production facilities are right at the border, just for historical reason, and it will take a drone to, you know, like a minute to fly from Russian airspace and destroy one of our plants. So I don't think I don't think there is a solution out there that will enable us to shoot down all those drones. So we would have to find where those drones are coming from and destroy that facility. In the same way, you know, as far as I know, I'm not a cyber person, but I think in your world, you need a lot of physical infrastructure, actually. It's not just virtual. You need data centers and power grid and, you know, an office building and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know how many square miles OpenAI inhabits, but I bet it's massive. So if you have, my enemy would have that, then I can find out where it is. And if I know where it is, and if I can get past their air defenses, I can blow it up. And, you know, try doing your offensive cyber then, once you're blown up. It's pretty difficult. It actually happened in Iran. As far as, we don't really know for certain because the Americans, again, don't share, but I think one of the things we can be pretty certain of is, you know, there was a lot of strikes against Iranian offensive cyber capabilities. So a lot of these like accounts that were spreading disinformation went suddenly quiet. And guess what? Because, you know, the people who were doing it no longer exist. So I think that's also, yeah, you're right that, you know, when we talk about war, and we kind of sugarcoat it with these words, but at the end of the day, what the Russian Federation would need to do is they would need to destroy the political and military leadership and our capability to resist. So that includes me. And what we have to do in order to win that war is to be able to do that to them faster and before they reach us. So, yeah, thanks.
I was just observing whether anyone wants to react because you had a great exchange. But we have last 10 minutes, and I wanted to turn to the audience because I believe there should be some chance for questions from people who have participated in this debate. Are there?
Come on now, you don't have your phones anymore. Put them all away.
I see no hands. So I will... I'm slightly disappointed now, but I came prepared. I do have questions for you, and I wanted to ask you, and I'm also reacting on the discussions that we had. We see, in broader lines, in the whole picture, that transatlantic trusted partnerships are having, admittedly, a difficult time. And I feel like, as we are arguing about who shares with what trusted partner, that creates so many opportunities for the adversaries we need to tackle together. So would you say, with your experience, especially focusing on defense and military and NATO affairs, does this create opportunities that adversary can exploit?
And maybe the French want to answer that question first. No, that's a political hot potato. So, yeah, of course. I mean, we all know that deterrence kind of depends on the capabilities that you have and then what your adversary assesses as your willingness to then use that force. So the military capabilities alone are not sufficient. You also need to convince the adversary that, yeah, well, you know, if they do something, then there will be an automatic, very strong reaction to that. And the whole of NATO, basically, if you read the treaty, actually, the North Atlantic Treaty, the only thing that it really guarantees is consultations in Brussels. So that's Article 4. Article 5 is worded intentionally in a way that it doesn't really guarantee an automated response. It depends on a political decision made in the North Atlantic Council. So that is always dependent on what the allies publicly say. So part of deterrence is that signaling that, yep, like, you know, Barack Obama came to Tallinn in 2014 and said that we will not allow, any Russian aggression against the Baltic states. And we know from Ben Rhodes that he meant he was serious about it, and the Russians, took him seriously. So whenever you cast any doubt on that, of course, it weakens deterrence and it makes a conflict more likely. So, that said, but then again, I think it's also, when I look at how NATO is functioning, I think from the inside it looks a little bit better than from the outside. So all this like political noise is also covering, stuff that we're doing, and I think and maybe the French can elaborate, but like the way that the troops are being drawn down in Europe is a little bit chaotic, but it's not unexpected. I mean, it's something that the U.S. signaled a very, very long time ago, and it said we're going to pivot to the Indo-Pacific, and the big challenge for them is China. Russia does not pose a strategic, existential threat to the United States, and we have to pick that up. And so I mean, maybe it's not done in the most like organized way, but it's, for me at least, I was expecting this. So
maybe to add, I agree about the military people in Europe, but for cyber defense, we need to share intelligence. What we had with the Olympic Games, that it was a success for France because we had access to the US intelligence about cyber defense. We were quite at the same level with the US. When they had an information, an intelligence, they told us what it was about, and we could use it. And we see that for the last 2 years, the level of intelligence in the US is getting quite very low, and we do not have the same amounts of intelligence and not the same quality of intelligence. But we have intelligence and quality intelligence from Ukraine. And we need to share those intelligence with the countries that are not in NATO, but are in Europe and are willing to share the intelligence, because every country in the east of Europe, when there's one country being attacked, they know that they are the next country to be attacked. So they need to share, and we need to share with them our intelligence, and to use their intelligence to protect ourselves and to be resilient. So that's another way of thinking about intelligence in Europe, and it's not NATO-centered, it's Europe-centered. And that's another way of thinking about cyber defense.
And maybe to switch gears slightly and go back to like a more technological focus, I think there is room for greater convergence and greater like cooperation on the transatlantic side, because what we're seeing from like the lens of like a frontier lab developing these technologies is that there is a lot of conversation in the industry and within like policy circles about like the risks. There is like more and more clearly like taxonomy of like the risks that we're trying to mitigate against. The cybersecurity risk is one. The loss of control, potential loss of controls of models is another. Cyber is another one. All the national security risks, basically, like usually used in the risk taxonomy. But what we're seeing at the same time is that the initiatives to tackle that, to measure these risks, to build benchmarks, to have like a roadmap to tackle those, are really like not necessarily converging and are moving in different orders, are sometimes redundant. And what we feel, going back to the question of like the very like the velocity of the technology is amazing. I just want to restate like one thing for us all to understand. 2 years ago, when we released the first reasoning model, O1, the model could reason for a couple of seconds and solve basic math. That was September 2024. Last summer, the frontier model could reach like gold medal at the International Math Olympiad, meaning like the same level as like the best mathematicians that we currently have in the world. And 10 days ago, one of our models solved an unresolved math problems from Erdos, the famous mathematicians, that remained unsolved for over 80 years. So within 2 years, we moved from like a model that could barely reason for a second and do like basic math to like solving unresolved math problems. The capabilities are advancing really fast. The risks associated to that are advancing really fast as well. And this is why we need coordination and convergence on efforts across the Atlantic, but even more globally, to tackle some of these risks. Because these risks won't be territorial, and they won't be associated with just like one nation. They are going to be global in nature.
Just a quick note. I'm always fascinated when I listen to like these open AI and guys talk about how like you're solving all these mathematical things. And then one of the things that I use these like chatbots for is when I'm traveling. I travel a lot, so I just want to know like in the airport if I have lounge access and where that lounge is. And you guys like always give me like the wrong information. So it's like the lounge you have access to is at gate 52A. Go there, and then I go there. There's either no lounge, or they tell me at the lounge, no sir, you don't have access to this lounge. You got to go to like the one that's at gate 12. So maybe like it's just, you know, as you're all doing all this like fantastic mathematical like visually, could you fix the airport lounges issue as well? That's just personally a little thing that I'm asking on behalf of the Estonian people. Thank you.
We are doing our best. This is a curse of jagged intelligence, basically, but we're working on it.
I don't know what it say about my moderating qualities when we came from military technology to lounges and how they're misplaced at the airports. I lost track somewhere in between. But to bring us together, I wanted, and I know that we are running out of time, but I also know that Sebastian specifically, he really likes to, at the end, ask a very concrete question because we keep discussing broad formats. So in next 12 months, like something doable, one priority for governments to do to improve the situation that we are currently seeing with the many problems that we name on the panel, something very concrete and doable across EU and US. 1-2 sentences, what it would be, and we'll do the whole line. So we can start with you, Anna.
Thanks or no thanks. Yeah, so I have to find something very quickly. I'm going to stay with my point of view, which is one of cyber entrepreneur. I'd say we need the Europe Defense Fund to be much more practical. Please do it really more practical, because as of now, I just can't understand how it works. Thank you.
I think as governments, they need to have like an AI adoption roadmap across the different services they have. And when I'm seeing like certain authorities still like considering AI as like a fad, I'm really concerned about like what's coming next, basically.
Yeah, so I mean, my 2 cents would be, so I mentioned this transformation command that we created, but the reason we are able to do many of these things is because we have raised our defense spending from 2%, which was the NATO standard, which sadly less than half was able to actually do, to 5% of actual real military defense spending, not the NATO 3.5, but we are spending 5% of our GDP on real defense, and then everything else comes on top of that. And the problem is that when we see this unfair burden sharing across the Atlantic, we're still seeing very unfair burden sharing inside Europe. So the much richer Western countries, and I'm not naming any names here, are not spending nearly enough on their national defense, both conventional and digital and transformational and digital. And with that, I hand over to my dear colleagues in France.
I will change the. You ask if I've got a kind of wish or something like that. I hope that we will find a way to fix fractures between AI and GDPR, personal data, and cultural protection, because it's one point of discussion, and we couldn't have AI tools be used for everybody if we do not fix this fracture. So I hope that we will find, and we'll find in Europe, but also in the US and in China, because we cannot do it only in Europe.
And defense spending?
So with that, I thank you very much.
We'll keep.
And thank you very much to our great panelists today. Thank you very much to the audience who came and to listen to the exchange. And I do invite you to the next panel. Thank you.